Welcome to Raw History. Here we cut through romanticization and speculation to show you the unfiltered reality of human history. The reality behind so-called zero electricity heating is, well, a bit different from what you might read online. The internet overflows with claims about suppressed 1940s heating technology that supposedly warmed homes without electricity, fuel, or ongoing costs. These stories often describe mysterious systems deliberately hidden by energy companies to protect their profits. But the truth actually involves real technology that existed, documented engineering principles and market forces that explain its decline, without needing any conspiracy theories. Gravity circulation heating systems, often called gravity hot water systems, used the simple principle that hot water rises while cool water descends, creating natural circulation within closed-loop piping, all without requiring electric pumps. These systems were examples of sophisticated engineering, adapted to an era when most American homes simply didn't have electrical service. The historical context here, honestly, matters enormously. In 1935, only about 10.9% of American farms enjoyed central station power. That's in stark contrast to places like Germany and Japan at 90%, France between 90 and 95%, and New Zealand at 60%. When the Rural Electrification Administration began operations in 1935, 90% of rural homes in the United States still didn't have electricity, so gravity heating systems weren't some kind of revolutionary alternative to electric heating. They were practical necessities, designed for a world where most Americans had no access to electrical power. These systems burned coal, wood, or oil in basement furnaces, using physics rather than electricity to circulate heated water or air through homes. The engineering reality of gravity systems is, well, quite fascinating. Gravity furnaces are heating systems that use natural convection to circulate warm air without fans or blowers, relying on the principle that hot air rises. These systems were popular from the 1880s to the 1950s, but they're significantly less efficient than modern furnaces, typically achieving only 50 to 60% efficiency, compared to 95% for contemporary units. The mechanics involved careful calculation of pipe angles, radiator placement, and system sizing, all to exploit density differences between hot and cold fluids. The piping had to be either vertical or slightly sloped to encourage buoyancy-driven flow and help prevent air pockets from forming within the piping, since such pockets could block flow. Hot water gravity systems required substantial infrastructure. Cast iron radiators throughout the home held water that absorbed heat from basement boilers, then radiated warmth into rooms as the water cooled and descended back through return pipes. These early hydronic systems were open to the atmosphere at the overflow pipe, limiting the pressure within the boiler and piping, making them safer than pressurized steam systems of that vintage. However, due to evaporation, the water level within the system would slowly drop, and water had to be periodically added to maintain proper operation. The zero electricity designation proves accurate only for water circulation. The furnaces themselves required fuel and manual tending, particularly coal-fired models that needed regular stoking. Gravity air systems worked similarly, using large basement furnaces that heated air, which rose through ductwork to upper floors. A gravity furnace heated air, and the hot air slowly rose through a duct system, as hot air always rises, with no fan to force the air. These octopus furnaces, named for their multiple branching ducts, provided whole-home heating, but responded slowly to temperature changes and created uneven heat distribution compared to modern forced air systems. Historical accounts from homeowners who maintained these systems into the late 20th century described their reliability and simplicity, but also acknowledged their limitations. The rapid expansion of rural electrification transformed American homes at unprecedented speed. In 1940, just 4.5 years after Roosevelt signed Executive Order No. 7037, 1/4 of American farms had been electrified. 10 years later, 90% had been electrified nationally. This infrastructure change made electric pumps and blowers economically viable for the first time across most of the country. By 1942, nearly half of rural farms had electricity, and more than 90% of US farms had electricity by 1953. Forced air heating started taking over after World War II, mainly because it was cheap, and, honestly, builders didn't care much about comfort or efficiency. Now this assessment from heating professionals really captures the economic reality. By 1935, the introduction of the first forced air furnace using coal as a heat source actually used the power of an electric fan to distribute the heated air through ductwork within the home. Not long after, gas and oil-fired versions of forced air furnaces would relieve homeowners from the chore of, stoking the coal fire. The shift toward forced air systems really accelerated during the post-war housing boom, when new construction methods and consumer preferences favored faster installation and integrated heating-cooling capability. The supposed involvement of energy companies in suppressing gravity heating just collapses under scrutiny. These systems burn the same fuels, coal, oil, and eventually natural gas, that energy companies sold anyway. By the 1940s, at least 1 in 10 homes across America used gas to heat their homes, but that completely changed just 1 decade later. While only 7.5% of Coloradans used gas for heat in the 40s, by the 1950s, nearly half of all homes in our state were using natural gas. Fuel suppliers actively promoted both gravity and forced air heating during this transition period, viewing residential heating as a growth market, regardless of system type. The transition actually benefited energy companies by expanding total consumption rather than threatening their business model. Consumer preferences drove the changeover just as much as any technological superiority. Forced air systems offered thermostat control, faster heat response, and the ability to integrate with air conditioning, features that gravity systems simply couldn't provide. In the Baltimore area, one-pipe steam predominated in smaller homes up to the mid-1930s or so, though there was a lot of gravity hot water as well. After that, it was forced hot water using oil-fired boilers, having tankless coils. Heating professionals from the era described customers simply preferring the convenience and performance of newer systems, rather than facing any kind of external pressure to abandon older technology. The post-war housing boom created new installation challenges that gravity systems couldn't address. It was the first time in history that homes had ever been built on just a slab of concrete. Contractors faced the daunting task of adapting heating systems to the new structural designs, each with its own heat loss characteristics. After all, furnaces didn't necessarily have a basement to go into, and the houses were going up too fast to wait for ductwork to be assembled. Gravity heating required basements for proper function. The vertical height difference between furnace and radiators created the pressure differential needed for circulation. Slab construction and crawlspace homes eliminated this possibility, making forced air or compact heating solutions the only practical options. Some gravity furnaces really should be replaced because of poor energy efficiency, uneven heating and, safety issues, though I should mention a few historic models might actually have preservation value. Modern forced air systems offer better comfort and efficiency and can even handle central air conditioning, so honestly, replacement is often a worthwhile investment. Still, the systems that are still functional, they just keep operating reliably. There's this one homeowner's account from 2014 describing gravity furnaces installed way back in 1914, converted from coal to gas in the 1920s, and remarkably, still heating a Detroit building after a full century of service. The simple mechanical design, no pumps, no electronic controls, nothing complicated, really does contribute to that exceptional longevity provided they're properly maintained. modern interest in gravity heating. It's really rooted in genuine concerns about grid dependence and mechanical complexity, rather than any attempt at historical accuracy. These systems do offer real advantages for certain situations. They keep working during power outages as long as there's fuel. They need very little maintenance, and honestly, they can last for many decades. Historic preservation organizations estimate that about 5% of pre-1950 homes still have working gravity heating, mostly in older urban neighborhoods where the cost of conversion just doesn't make sense. Off-grid homesteaders sometimes install new gravity systems, especially in places where wood or coal is plentiful, but electricity is, well, unreliable. The bigger takeaway here is about evaluating historical technologies honestly, instead of, romanticizing them as somehow suppressed solutions. Gravity heating was good engineering that addressed specific problems under particular constraints. When those constraints changed, when electricity became universal, when people wanted more convenience, when building designs evolved, the technology naturally faded away. No conspiracy required, just the usual process of technological succession, shaped by changing infrastructure, what consumers want, and how buildings are constructed. Understanding this helps us figure out which old techniques are worth bringing back and which have been replaced for good reasons. Energy security needs innovation, but the best answers come from solid engineering guided by historical insight, not from myths about hidden technologies. So if you're interested in more evidence-based investigations into forgotten technologies and the real reasons they disappeared, go ahead and subscribe to Raw History. And hey, if you've got any experiences with historical heating systems, please share them in the comments below.